Hi everyone, today is Sunday, October 11th, and welcome to the Morning Brief. This is the channel to get your second stimulus and pandemic news update in a clear and concise summary. If you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe, like, and the bell button. In stimulus news yesterday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi poured a huge glass of cold water on stimulus talks yesterday afternoon, with a big press release on the speaker's website, essentially slamming Trump's $1.8 trillion counteroffer that was presented on Friday. In the press release, she called it a vastly insignificant proposal in dealing with the coronavirus. In releasing such a statement, Pelosi and the Democrats makes it almost certain that Congress won't pass an economic relief package before the upcoming November 3rd election. So in this video, I wanted to analyze her press release in detail. But before we do that, let's take a step back for a moment and remember kind of how we got here and what happened last week on Friday. So Trump last week said he was interested in a large mega deal for stimulus, almost, and this came 2 days before abruptly calling off stimulus talks entirely on Tuesday with his tweet that sent the stock market crashing 2-3% overnight. So, and then on Friday, Trump offered this 1.8 trillion offer, which was an increase over the previous 1.6 amount that had been standing on the table for a few months earlier. But it was still well below the 2.2 trillion bill that the House Democrats had passed the week before. So we were in the stalemate of between 1.6 to 2.2 trillion that I had always mentioned. And on Friday, basically Trump's bid came up to the 1.8 trillion mark, and there was only a gap of about 400 billion. So, and on Friday, the president said he'd like to see a bigger stimulus bill than what was currently floated around by the Democrats. But anything for the congressional Republicans, they remain opposed to a price tag over 1 trillion on any new aid. And many Republican senators have outright kind of not been very supportive of any aid over 500 billion, which is a really low amount. So in the press release, Pelosi argued that the actual language, I mentioned this yesterday, is the really important issues at heart. And the language will really specify where the funds are being directed and is the critical aspect of the bill. So let's go over her summary in the press release. So it's entitled, "Dear Colleague, Update on the Coronavirus Relief Negotiations and the Administration's Insufficient Proposal." So she starts off by saying on Friday, the Trump administration returned to the table with a proposal that attempted to address some of the concerns Democrats have in a coronavirus relief negotiation. The proposal amounted to 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So this is a key statement by her saying, we're kind of there, but we're not. But come on, we're so close in the overall amount, 1.8, 1.9 to 2.2. I'm sure you could close that 300 billion amount, which I find, this is crazy that they're not acting faster. When the president talks about wanting a bigger relief package, his proposal appears to mean that he wants more money at his discretion to grant or withhold rather than agreeing to language prescribing how we honor our workers, crush the virus, etc., etc. So she goes on to elaborate at that point. So that's a very interesting statement. So she's basically putting the blame on Trump as he's not willing to clarify where these funds are going and being vague to have room to maneuver this money amount for the president's purposes going forward. So she's basically calling him out on that and wants more specific clauses for that. So a few more paragraphs down, I found another important statement. A key concern is the absence of any response on a strategic plan to crush the virus. We cannot safely reopen schools, the economy, and our communities until we crush the virus with a science-based national plan for testing, tracing, treatment, and isolation, and an equitable and ethical distribution on a safe and effective vaccine once deployed. This strategic plan is contained in the HEROES Act. So a few points of attack from Pelosi on Trump. So this, I think, goes back to the few areas of contention we mentioned. The amount in terms of state and overall local funding, that's still in a gap between 250 billion from the Democrats to 250 billion for the Republicans, but the Democrats want 400 billion. So she mentions part of the safe reopening, they need a larger budget. Also, the 75 billion that was outlined for coronavirus testing and tracing still hasn't been resolved between the two parties, it seems. So she mentions that again. If we go down, in the last paragraph, she specifically outlined some plans for how a family of four would be affected. So she goes over direct relief, earned income tax credits, childcare, unemployment insurance. I think unemployment insurance was the big one. So she states, in the HEROES Act contains strong funding to protect the 5 million workers at risk of exhausting all of their regular unemployment insurance or pandemic unemployment assistance benefits before January 31st. Trump's proposal, 200 billion less than what Democrats proposed, which experts tell us what is needed. So if you remember, this is kind of what I stated previously before, as the Democrats want to have $600 a week extra unemployment insurance. And that timeline was I believe 6 weeks longer than what the Republicans wanted at $400 and 6 weeks shorter. So it still seems that there's a big gap in that area. And that equates to about 200 billion in the budget, which is almost the entire difference of the bill between the 1.8 and the 2.2. 200 billion is about half of the 400 billion. So I think they're very close, but there's a lot of political jockeying and blaming, which is unfortunate because I think a bill could be passed, but it doesn't look like it will before the election now. So she closes the statement, but I think, just skimming through it in a couple minutes, we can see where her mind is at and what is going on in the politics behind. So just in summary, if we go back, let's step back and look at the higher picture. So we know that this bill, the 1.8 billion bill, is being criticized by both now the Pelosi and the Democrats, and there was also a lot of pushback from Trump's own Republican Party. In the conference call on Saturday, Mnuchin and White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows blasted the 1.8 trillion offer the White House made to Speaker Pelosi, according to multiple sources. They went through over a lot of GOP concerns like the state and local funding issue and the overall price tag, as we discussed. So there's a lot of dissent also within Trump's own party, and a lot of other Republican senators came out publicly and blasted this amount as being too high, such as Senator Mike Lee, a Utah Republican, and also Senator Lamar Alexander. He actually said that there was basically no appetite to float this bill, and they also kind of blasted the overall amount of, anything over 500 billion would be way too big. And Mitch McConnell, he said on Friday also that he's wary of adding any debt over to, a growing U.S. debt already. So let's see how this develops, but this is not positive news. I think that's it for now. Enjoy your Sunday. See you back here tomorrow. Please hit subscribe. Thank you.